Welcome back to another episode of the Becoming You podcast. This episode is for you if you are someone that wants to grow. Now, grow what? Grow your income, grow your opportunities, grow your relationships. If you're in business, of course, you want to grow your bottom line. You want to grow your return on investments. If you're just a driven human being, you just want to grow. You want to experience more in life. I want to show you how to do this in a way that I have to say this is a little bit back to the basics, but it's probably my not so secret to how I have not only grown a business that I absolutely love, but how I continue to do it even when I've gone dark on social media for 6 months. It is the strategy in business and in life that withstands all time. This is about connections and how they convert into everything. So I want to tell you a little bit about my personal philosophy on relationship building. And this is not just in business, this is in life. People can feel the difference between being transactional and transformational. And you all know what I'm talking about. You've all had those moments. And I'm not talking just about I've had people that met me and they're like, oh, I met you that one time. You seemed like you were a little distracted or this or that, right? But when you have someone that comes up, let's say they sit next to you at an event, or, you meet them at a networking event, or you just out and about living your life, and you can tell maybe they're asking you questions about yourself, but you can just tell that it feels transactional. They are making those judgments, those surface level judgments of can this person benefit me? You can feel it. You can feel like they're they really want something, right? And nobody loves that feeling. At least I do not as a relationship builder. So I want to talk to you about why meaningful connections create more impact than almost anything. Let's start with talking about just first of all, building through relationships. And it's so funny because I spoke in September, so about 3 months ago, at Lori Harder, who was one of my expanders at her event. And we were literally, what I spoke on is connections in life, in business, and how to create them. And the reason that this is funny is to be on that stage, I did not pitch. It was the relationship. I'll talk to you about that. I opened it up by asking everyone what they were here for. And I want to ask you the same. What are you on this podcast listening for? And so I asked them, and the answers that came up were strategy, support. Some people wanted to meet new team members. They wanted to meet new clients. And I said, okay, I get that. I get that those things feel true. The reality is every single one of those answers was in their inbox, right? There's someone pitching you, if you are a business owner, on everything that you possibly could need. Literally, it's in your inbox or it's a Google search away. What people come together for, especially in person, is connection, is to feel someone else's energy. Yes, they want the end result of the strategy, the support, the team, the clients, the income growth, the personal growth, the fun, the experience, whatever it is. But we go and network, or we go into the real world off our computers for connection. And so when we create connection, it's like having a spark. So this episode is going to be about, okay, what does it feel like in that spark and what can come out of it? Let's talk about when you are creating those connections, how do you do it in a way that is real, that feels just as good for the other person as it does for you? And it goes way beyond the surface level, because I've often said, I've never felt lonelier than I do in a crowded room, unless it's the right room, right? If it's a room with people that I don't align with. And that doesn't mean nobody's bad or good, right? It's just if they don't align. So in building through the relationships, the very most valuable lesson I would say is just quality over quantity. Quality over quantity. This is not about how many people you have on your LinkedIn connections. That's great if you're using LinkedIn for business building. This is not about how many people are, in your phone. I have a lot of people. I literally say people by my son's 3rd grade class teacher. And this is, what she's told me about herself. I've saved those notes because I'm not going to remember everyone's names, but the quality is everything. The meaningful connections in my life, most of my biggest accomplishments were not because I'm better, smarter, or even harder working. My TEDx was literally from a connection, right? A lot of the things that people do or create has nothing to do with brains, hard work, any of that, because there's a lot of people out there that are brilliant and hardworking and don't necessarily lead rich, impactful, rewarding, incredible lives. Those are often from connections. My husband did his MBA for connections. Yes, he learned things, but it was for the connections. That's why people go do an MBA. So for me, it's led to visibility. It's led to business opportunities, obviously income, impact, friendships. So just today, in fact, I need to buy my flight tonight for Mexico on, I think it's our 3rd kind of girlfriends and in business, ironically, trip to Mexico. And it happens to be over my birthday this year. And I don't go on that trip because business will happen out of it. I go on that trip to bond and create experience with women that I care about and adore, who I spend time with because we are not only in business together, and I don't mean we're not on a team, we're not, in the same company, but we have been in masterminds together, or some of them have been clients, or vice versa. It's because I trust, love, adore, admire them. The business comes as a secondary. So intentional networking, right? I do believe if you're a business owner, you should be looking at how do you have new eyes on your business, right? That's the transactional approach. But the transformational approach is how can you meet 1 to 2 people a month? 2 is an amazing number who you can serve and you can be served by. And that starts with focusing on the person in front of you. I'm sure you have sat there and you've either like been on Zoom with someone having a chat and you can tell they're online shopping. They're like, right? Hopefully not often. Hopefully that will never happen again after this. Or you've been at an event and you can tell someone's just like looking over your shoulders, like be here now, be where your feet are, focus on the person in front of you. And if you focus on how you can serve them, which we're going to talk about, and not what's in it for you. And by the way, I mean this in a healthy boundary way, not a overgive to everyone you meet and don't discern of who is worthy of that time, energy, and attention. But don't rush. I know the old days, it was like, how many business cards can you get? And then, I have business cards that were sitting in desk drawers collecting dust. I don't remember who they are or how I met them. I'm talking about when you go out and about and you're in a space where you're going to meet other like-minded people, personally, professionally. How can you ensure that you create 1 to 2 meaningful connections? That's the spark, right? That's the spark. And usually if you're a business owner or have any extrovert in you at all, that's probably actually not that hard. We are excited to talk about what you're excited about. So that's the first thing, is go to places where there are other people that have the same interests and excitement as you. This does not mean be in an echo chamber or like everyone has to look like this, but this means like there's a reason if you go to a personal development event, you're going to meet other inspiring people because there are people that are looking for growth. Or if you go to a meetup that's, or a gym, you're going to meet other people that are prioritizing their fitness. Like you're going to have commonality because you have a shared interest. In fact, it's a great way to meet potential clients or power partners. It's also a great way to meet a romantic partner if you are single. Go to places where people share something with you. And then look at the energy of those people. Because I'm sure you've met someone and on paper they look like, oh, that's a great fit. But there's something off energetically. And again, it might be that you feel a transactional vibe from them, or they just could be having a bad day. But focus on like, where do you feel energetically connected with someone, regardless of whether or not on paper they look like a good fit for you, your business. And then focus on the long term. And I'm going to talk to you about exactly how to do this. But what is the whole point of all of this? One, I'm sharing the results because my business, if I look at over the last, every year really, since I started my business in 2020, I would say 50% of my business, or at least $250,000 a year or more, comes from connections, not from ads, not from launches, not from email marketing. Like all of those things are great, not from social media. It's how I've continued to have business come in when I've been off social for months. It comes from having people that I have relationships with that I'm continuing to nurture. That's the thing, is like, yes, social media is great. Spend your time on social media, sure, be efficient about it, have boundaries. But if you're on social media showing up, you're not showing up on the relationships in your life, what is the point? That's going to feel super empty. And that's not what I'm here for. And I'm sure you aren't as well. But create those relationships and think about like, how do you nurture them? Think about the ROI. And I am not talking about the return on investment. You will get that, but it's not necessarily going to be the money you put into the relationship. It might be the time, the energy, the effort, the support. I like to think of ROI as, or redefine it as, the relationships, the referrals, the opportunities, the impact, and yes, the income that will come from that. And you never know who. I mean, I had a woman I was in a mastermind with her, and we weren't like the best of friends. I mean, we were doing some similar things, but I provided value for her a few times. I helped her launch her podcast. I was like, here's the framework I used. Here's what I would do differently. I'd love to have you as a guest. We did a guest swap. I had her speak one time at one of my events. Someone I would sit down and like absolutely have a 2-hour dinner with, but not someone that I talk to on a regular basis, but someone that if they need something, I know they can come to me. And that relationship brought in more than $40,000 of client referrals in 1 year. That happens when you focus on the continued building of it. This doesn't mean you have to talk to this person every day. They don't have to be your best friend, but how are you contributing to their life experience, whether that's personally or professionally? So I'll talk about Lori Harder being on that stage. I've known of Lori for 13 years. I met her husband first. Me and my husband met him. And, I've always been a supporter of hers, sometimes very loudly, sometimes just like behind the scenes, like liking things. Sometimes this is on social media. Sometimes it's like once I had her number, like shooting her a text of support or just asking, what can I do to support you? And all of that, like, would I have loved to be on Lori Harder's podcast? Of course. Would I have loved to speak on one of Lori Harder's stages? Of course. but I didn't look at the relationship as like, what can I get out of this? I looked at it as, this is a person that I love their energy. I appreciate the contribution they've made in my life, not even like intentionally. And if I can serve them in any way, I absolutely will. And at the very least, I'm going to cheer her on. Right. And I'm going to communicate to her where she's created impact. And so I ended up having dinner almost exactly a year ago with Chris and Lori in Newport Beach, which is where they live part of the year. And I didn't get that dinner because I bought it. I didn't get that dinner because we're amazing friends. It was because I was picked as the MVP in the mastermind I was in. I think it was the year before, and I finally was cashing it in, and it was a VIP day and this dinner. And that, by the way, I didn't show up to the mastermind as VIP, or I didn't become VIP because I was the biggest or best business in the room, or because any of that. I voted because it was like, who has contributed to the group, who has affected or given you something that has been valuable, whether it's their time, energy. And in that group, I just tried to connect with as many people as possible, but not just to like connect with, be like, and I'm going to give you all of this, by the way. I'm going to give you all of these steps. I just looked at, how can I serve them within my zones of genius, whether that's personal or professional? How can I make a resource or an introduction or a referral or whatever? Or how can I just like show up as a great human being in that person's life? And I didn't try to do it for everyone. I think there was 25 or 26 people in the mastermind. I was like, who am I drawn to? Who do I think I can support? And so I probably did that with 12 to 14 of the people in the mastermind, half of them. And it ended up that I got voted MVP, and because of that got this dinner. And at that dinner, I was just chatting with Lori, and she was about to launch Glossy, her incredible wellness brand. And I said, I've got some ideas. By the way, I wasn't trying to pitch her anything. I was just like, just a couple of things to do as you're launching that we've done with some of our PR clients. And I was just like, let me give you as much strategy as you want if you're open to it. And she was like, tell me more. So I gave them some strategies and some things that she could do, like seeing who she is and what she's about, and some opportunities for her in an area that I understand. And then of course I also was like, how can I just support you? Like, can I have you on my podcast? Can I have you this? What can I do? And asking her, because I'm sure she had ideas as well. And at the end of that dinner, she said, I want you to pitch me to do PR for Glossy. And I was like, what? I was scared. And ironically, we are doing PR for Glossy. But it happened because of a genuine connection that I'd nurtured over a decade. It did not happen because I crafted a great pitch letter. And ironically, I show people how to pitch and pitch well and pitch differently. And I say the first rule is just like, be a good human being. Just be a good human being. People can feel it. That's just a couple of the ways of like why creating those connections is so important. And if you're like, wow, I'm just doing it all wrong. If you're like relying on, again, doesn't mean the ads and some of those things are not useful, or, the algorithms and the strategies, but ask yourself, are you doing what you can from a standpoint of growing relationships, of showing up, of serving others, and evaluate your current connections? Which relationships feel meaningful? Which feel transactional? I would give you permission to get rid of the ones that feel transactional. I know someone that I've known in business for about 7 years. On paper, we are an incredible match. That person has done some really cool things, and there's a lot of synchronicity between us. However, I had an experience with them, and not just a one-time, I'm not making like a one-time snap judgment, but an experience with them, and then had other people come to me and say, like, I seen you worked with that person, and they basically told me that they'd had a really negative experience. And I hadn't talked about it, but what came out is that person is highly transactional, and they've left a path of people that feel burned, whether it was intentional or it was unintentional. But that is not what you want. You want your relationships to feel transformational. Like, I get excited when I get on calls with my clients because I built a relationship with them and I have fun with them. And like this week, I'm hosting 26 women in my home for my last year's mastermind and most of the women for next year's mastermind. It's like, I want to bring them into my home. I want you to feel like I would bring this person into my home. And you do that by starting with being present and showing genuine care and offering value. And the practical strategies of this, like, yes, it's not just like show up in your best self. Like, you know how to do that. You could literally Google it or ask ChatGPT, like, what do you need to do to take care of yourself? Do you need to dress in a way that makes you feel confident? Do you need to listen to something inspiring? Do you need to make sure you got sleep the night before? So you can just energetically and physically show up. But then when you show up, don't just show up and be a one-hit wonder. Don't just show up and be charismatic in your best self and connected and then let it go nowhere. You want to, again, nurture that spark into a flame, into a fire. So following up meaningful gestures. I have learned for myself, I have the best intentions. And if I don't do something right away, it doesn't happen. It just doesn't. So if I meet someone that I'm like, oh my gosh, we should chat, I don't just like share their contact information. I literally send them my calendar, or I put it in my calendar right then. Because if I feel it's important in that moment, it it deserves to be on my calendar. Meaningful gestures. So the rebellious side of me, maybe it's my Aquarius or my Enneagram 7, is like, I don't want to send things just because it's someone's birthday. But if I see a big occasion happening for that person, like my friend Hannah just started an incredible 7-figure women's membership group, Maison. And I joined it and I was like blown away on the first call. And I sent her a beautiful bouquet of flowers. I'm like, I'm so proud of what you're doing. And I am excited for them. Now, you can use whatever your love language is. Sometimes it's my friends that are going through something hard. And I'm like, I'm here if you want to do a breathwork session. And I'll do it 5:30 in the morning on Saturday, like 100%. Those are just some practical things, but schedule it in, create the times to connect. And my challenge to you is identify like 1 or 2 people right now you want to build a deeper relationship with or a deeper connection with. Take action on it. And one of my favorite things I've ever done, and in fact, I just was thinking about this, Lori Harder was on this list, is, you've heard we become the sum of the people that we surround ourselves with, the 5 people. And that is, not just like who's in physical proximity, though that's very powerful. It's also what you put in your head or who you're spending time with. If you are the highest in that group, it's like a relationship spiral. You will spiral down, right? You will become the sum of people if they're, and I don't want to say lesser because it's not about being a good or bad person, but if they don't have some of the same ideals, if they're not driven in the same way, it'll be okay to like be a little less aligned, be a little less positive or a little less growth oriented or whatever. Or you can choose who you want to spiral up with, who are the people that you want to be around. So, look at those people and take action. Just be like, hey, it's been forever. I'd love to catch up. I'd love to know how you are. I'd love to know what you're excited about. And when you're looking at, again, that naughty word of networking, look at how can you show up with intention and authenticity that creates a lasting impact. First of all, where do you want to show up? Because you may be showing up in places right now that are not the best places for you. You may need a different energetic home base for creating relationships. Or if you can't find one, how can you create one and have everyone bring a friend and say, hey, this is the theme or this is the value. But understand that the true ROI, the relationships, the referrals, the opportunities, the impact and the income are going to come from transformational relationships, not transactional relationships.